Hello everyone, welcome to your lecture on youth, culture and consumption. This lecture is a part of your paper on youth, media and society. In this lecture, you will learn that how the consumption culture is increasing among the youth day by day. In order to understand this change, we will discuss some sociological and economic theories. This lecture will first discuss the basic definition of these three concepts: youth, culture and consumption, and then the changing relationship between them. In this lecture, you will also learn how media influence the consumer culture among young people and how it has changed over the years. We will also look at the Indian perspective, focusing on years after 1991, that is when LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization were introduced in India. Let us define each of the concepts in this lecture's title. Defining youth is always difficult because it is a vague concept. It can be defined as a phase of human life where every individual completes a journey of a very important transition of life from childhood to adulthood. However, the definition of youth depends upon different factors such as socio-economic situations, policy and law, society or civic ethics, family and individual moral values. Now, a basic understanding of culture suggests that culture is a set of ideas, customs, social behavior and trends which are not very rigid but popular among people of any society or nation. The Oxford Dictionary defines culture as a way of life, art, music, literature, belief, attitude of a group of people or society. Culture of any society is not made or built in few days, but it takes centuries to develop a culture. It is a distinguished feature of any society. Consumption has both economic and sociological meaning. In economic terms, consumption means using of goods and services by consumer buying. According to Oxford Dictionary, a fundamental definition of consumption highlights the purchase and use of goods and services, nothing that the point of expenditure on such items and the instant of their usage establish the act of consumption. This understanding of consumption reflects a practical, economic approach to consumption that should be seen as a preliminary idea, since the range of theoretical and experimental advances within the field of consumption. In any economy, youth is considered to be the biggest consumer section. Media plays a pivotal role in increasing the buying capacity of a younger generation. Let's look at various theories of consumption. Like we discussed earlier, consumption has both economic and sociological theories. According to economist Keynes, consumption increases as income increases. Further, Keynes explained the psychological reasoning behind the consumption pattern as income rises, consumption also grows, but this growth is not equally proportionate as the increase in income. After Keynes, other economists also started analyzing consumption patterns, relatively income theory of consumption. American economist J.S. Duesenberg gives the relative income theory of consumption. According to this theory, an individual's consumption behavior depends on his relative income instead of his absolute income. He basically means that a person's consumption behavior depends more on his income in relation to that of individuals, that is, relative income. Life cycle theory of consumption. Another important consumption theory, which is given by Modigliani and Ando. According to this theory, the consumption pattern is not dependent on the present income, but consumption amount is analyzed by the entire lifetime expected income. It assumed that individual will follow the same consumption pattern throughout his life. Sociology of consumption. Consumption has always been a discussion point for sociology. In 1889, Thurston Wellston had introduced the theory of the leisure class, which is considered to be the first ever theoretical analysis of consumption from a sociological point of view. But this theory was more focused on industry and business and less on consumption behavior. It was only in the second half of the 20th century when the detailed discussion on sociology of consumption started in European and American countries. Three veteran sociologists have given the basic theories of consumption from the sociological point of view. First, Karl Marx explained the theory behind consumption. He termed it commodity fetishism. According to commodity fetishism, the social relations of labor are differentiated by user properties that transmit other kinds of representative value for their users. It also shows that how identity is linked to consumption and how consumable things play a significant part in traditions and customs in the world. In the 19th century, Max Weber wrote about the growing importance of consumer goods in the social life. It simply means that Social relationships involved in production process are viewed as economic activities between consumer and commodity. The concept is primarily explains the consumer cognizance and identity. Smile-Durkheim's theory is based on the representative cultural importance of material substances in a religious framework. The sociology of consumption is not merely based on the fact of purchasing goods and items, but it involves emotions, values, identities, thoughts, and behavioral patterns. It deals with following points which determine people's consumption behavior. Number 1. People's way of interaction at marketplaces, shopping malls, and streets. Secondly, the connection among individual and collective identities and consumer products and places. Third, the composition, expression, and location of lifestyles determined and placed into hierarchical order through consumer behavior and identities. Fourth, process of restoration in which buyer ethics, practices, and places determines the cultural and class demographies of the particular locality, towns, and cities. Fifth, the standard and concepts implanted in marketing, advertising, and product packing. Sixth, individuals' personal and group association with the brands. Seventh, moral values related to the consumption pattern. For example, eco-friendly sustainability, the civil rights and the self-esteem of workers and financial disparity. 8. Consumer engagement and citizenship, also anti-consumer activism and the way of life. Around the world, consumption culture started with the Industrial Revolution. In its early years, this culture was more popular in the Western world, but with globalization, it has become popular around the world, especially among youth. And through the internet revolution, this consumption culture has reached on its peak. The youth is a collective group that uses the new media in a fashionable way. As a result of the global development of new media technologies, consumer culture is becoming more and more globalized in the sense that it is gently assimilated through local culture. There is also a shared action, opening up an explosion of symbolic opportunities for individual experience. Youth, culture, and consumption can be defined under the following concepts. Number 1, identity. Consumption patterns are determined by individuals' choice. At the same time, consumption can also shape an individual's identity. Consumption plays a significant role in identity construction for teenagers socialized in modern society. That's why the adult identity can be similar to childhood. Identity is not only related to the product we consume, but it also linked to the manufacturing process of the product. People who have been brand conscious in their childhood will remain the same throughout their life. Consumption not only shapes individuals' identity but also constructs public identity. Consumption patterns create class struggle as well. It can help the younger generation to create a new identity of what they are. Material things help in this as they are spent with representative implications so that connections with peers and identities can be formed. This is where the significance of consumption exists in. Secondly, group cultural consumption. Individuals mainly live in a group where one can socialize and share things. The group plays an important role in deciding individual choices and consumption patterns. There are 4 important aspects of individual group relationships. Number 1, there are some groups from which an individual belongs. Secondly, there are groups individuals want to be a member of that group. These groups are called aspiration groups. Third, there are some groups no one wants to be a part of it. Fourth, the last is the neutral group, which makes no differences in individual's life. This group culture determines individuals' consumption patterns in 2 ways. Number 1, peer group pressure. Second one, impression management. Because of peer group pressure, people adopt certain type consumption patterns. This peer group pressure is more common among the younger generation. Sometimes people want to make an impression among other group members. That's why they use certain type of products. This also determines people consumption behavior. Thus, consumption is a part of the set of manufacturing and movement of goods, which not only include economical aspects, but it involves social and educational sides as well. The idea of cultural consumption can be explained as a set of adopted practices and usage of items in which the goods' symbolic worth succeeds over the usage value and conversation value. Family, school, and the neighborhood also play an important role in shaping the consumption behavior of cultural goods. An individual's consumption behavior is affected by brands, especially in teenagers and youth's consumption behavior. Most of the brands try to target younger generation. For example, Jio Mobile Company offers a set of cheap plans, especially for internet surfing, which is more suitable for the young people. When we talk about consumption, shopping is the most important act of consumption. There are certain questions related to shopping like what, why, when and where, but most important is how. Online shopping has become new trend among the youth. The young generation prefer to go for online shopping than to the offline shopping. This online shopping has changed the consumption pattern. Another important aspect is that these days the consumption is not based on the need but on desire. People want to buy because they want to experience it, not because they are in urgent need of anything. When we talk about consumption, shopping is the most important act of consumption. The shopping websites give different types of discounts like end of season sale, mid season sale. Most of the younger generation wants to go for cost effective shopping so that they can buy more in limited amount. There are some other factors which affect consumption patterns. For example, upbringing of the younger generation. Sometimes they follow the same consumption patterns as their parents, but sometimes they adopt exactly opposite. Schools and colleges also play important role in shaping the consumption pattern of the teenagers and youngsters. The third factor in this is the effect of advertisement. They are a very important medium for selling of products. The last component is the monetary feature. Money is the most important element of consumption. For teenagers and half of the young generation, source of money is either pocket money or money from some part-time job. This small amount of money decides their consumption behavior. Youth, consumption culture and new technologies. As we discussed, the new technological changes is creating a new type of consumption culture which is driven by desire and dreams instead of necessity. In the contemporary world, a new culture is emerging that is to have is to be. Mobile phones is one of the media technologies which have become an important tool. It is an easy option to connect one's taste to others and shows contemporary fashion styles, therefore revealing societal status and influence. In contemporary times, youth are growing up with this awareness that communication is largely dependent on technology. Mobile phones have become the universal need for all age groups. Through different types of mobile applications like wireless application, protocol, short message services and multimedia message services, mobiles have become even more useful and accessible for the masses. In the last 5 years, the use of mobile phones have changed a lot particularly for the younger generation. For youth, mobile is not only a device for voice telephony, but it has now become a machine which can be used for multiple purposes. It can be useful for internet uses, playing games, online shopping, online dating, and even for matrimonial purposes. Therefore, youth has developed a consumption capability, social skills, and various conventions from mobile phones, and their consumption attitude is mainly developed by using social media with its leisure activities. That's why mobile phones and other technical leisure devices have become an essential part of the younger generation's day-to-day life. The youth have now become vulnerable consumers of new age technologies. After analyzing the consumption patterns of the youth, it is essential to examine youth consumption practices because they work as mechanism of inclusion and or social exclusion. As its consequence, youth are more vulnerable. That's why they are easy target for the market forces. Different social groups are established to understand the different forms of appropriation of mass media and communication technologies. Cultural consumption pattern explains youth identity, placing them as consumers or consumer citizens rather than as common people. People have their own personal choices and liberty to choose what they want and what they afford. Lately, the term equality of opportunity is being reconsidered as the equality of opportunity to consume. Conclusion. Therefore, in this lecture, you learned that youth cultures have certainly been in the forefront of new consumption patterns. Increasing different styles across the globe reflects that the younger generation practice the same set of encounters, comforts, and worries in the similar manner because there is an idea of universal youth culture, especially for the middle and upper class youth who have common interests in fashion. Though the method of consumption is not same everywhere, it differs in developed and developing countries. Youth from different social strata are now part of the universal consumption circle, and as a consequence, it has now become a necessity to connect through various media technologies. For more detail, please read the module on this lecture carefully and attempt the questions in the end. Thank you.